Hello, my name is Veronica, and welcome to the Learning Lab, Episode 12, The Trophy Card. When I first saw this absolutely stunning card, it took my breath away. So of course, I had to pull out my trusted friend, the Score Pal, figure out some measurements, and bring it to share with you in today's lab. If you're interested in finding out the specifics, please visit my blog at inkillusions.blogspot.com. So come on in and let me share with you just how I accomplished this. Now to begin with, you're going to start with a 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock paper, and you're going to need to bend it to find the grain of the paper, because when we make our score marks, we want to make it with the grain so that it's easier to fold. If you need help with that, please see Learning Lab Episode 11. It addresses that issue. Once you've found your grain and cut it properly, you're going to need to make your score marks. And you're going to make a score at 1.5, 3, 4.5. This one at 6 is actually a cut line that you're going to make, and you're going to leave about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch on either side. I went ahead and used this just to give me a groove in that line so that when I'm ready to cut it, I know exactly where to cut. You can actually rub hard enough that you make a slit in it. You also need a score at 7.5, 9, and 10.5. Once you've done that, it's going to look like this. Now let me show you how I cut my slit. Although the Score Pal does come with its own cutting mat, I'm going to go ahead and use my Helix translucent cutting mat. And then I'll put my paper down so that I can continue to see my score lines. Then I'm going to take my craft tool and go over the line where I need to make my slit. I can see here, and I'm just going to go over that. We're ready to do some folding. And the way I fold is I start at the first fold line and go from there. Then I'll do the next one and continue across. Let's turn this around and go to the other side. Once you've gone over all of your scoring lines by folding it, you have the base for your card. It simply folds in just like that, although this is the bottom. Here's the top with your slit. If at this point you want to decorate any of the outside edges, like I did on the sample one that I showed at the beginning, now is the time to put those on. Don't worry too much if you can't see this. I am going to make it available on my blog, but I do know that my paper is 6 inches wide, and going across here is 3 inches. So if I want to leave a 1/4 inch around this, I know if I want to leave a 1/4 inch showing, then I just have to simply subtract out a 1/4. So I'm going to cut a piece of paper that's 5 3/4 by 2 3/4. Likewise over here, I know that this is still 6 and this is 1.5 inches, so I'm going to cut this to 5 3/4 by 1 1/4. Can you hear that 5 3/4 and 5 3/4 ringing in your ear? Because that's what's going to help you to cut your paper and minimize waste. Let me bring in this one. So let's pretend that this is your 6 by 12 piece that you're going to use to turn into the pieces to decorate the size of your card. What I would suggest that you do is remove a 1/4 of an inch from this long side, because I know this is 6, it's going to leave me with 5 3/4 of an inch. So now I can just put this in my paper trimmer, and if this is a side that I'm cutting on, for the sake of space, we're going to pretend this is my 12-inch trimmer. I'm going to slide this in, and I'm going to make my first cut at 9 1/4. Then I'm going to make my second cut at 8, and then my last cut is going to be at 6 3/4. The paper going off the side here are my cuts. What I'm left with is a nice piece so that if I'm doing 2 cards, I can make more pieces out of it. Let me show you what that looks like once you've cut it. My pieces are already decorated to save on the sake of time. Remember, I removed a 1/4 of an inch over here. So I have this one that was cut at 9 3/4. This one was cut at 8, and this was cut at 6 3/4. And what that leaves me with is enough paper to do some matting or some other things with it. Using whatever adhesive you prefer, go ahead and adhere these. Once you have these glued down into place, you need to go back and open your slit that you made. So turn over your card, and as you can see, there's my slit, and I'm just going to go back and open that hole in my card. If you're using an extremely heavy weight, you may want to go over it twice just to make sure that it goes through and you have your opening. Now let's set this to the side and prepare our card piece that's going to go in the center. Looking at this again, from the side you can see the depth here. This is the amount of the card that you will not decorate. So keep that in mind when you're putting your embellishments on the front. You're going to need to leave 1.5 inches unadorned so that it can go down into that slit. So how are you going to do that, you ask? The same way we did the other cutting. Again, pretend this is my 12-inch trimmer. You're going to slide your paper in, and you're going to make your first cut at 8, which is going to give you 4 inches that you've cut off. You're going to make your next cut at 4, and that's going to leave you 4 on there. So out of this, you can get 3 cards. Once you've cut your 4x6 piece, go ahead and layer on any embellishments, any stamping, inking, or chalking that you would like to do at this point. The next step is to bring back in your card base. Take your piece and you're going to slide it down into your slit. Because I know this is my 1.5 inch piece, I'm going to make sure this is lined up here. Then I'm going to put some of my favorite adhesive on there. You can use some double-sided tape if you like, but I'm going to pull in some of this Aleene's 2-in-1 glue. I actually like it, and it holds really well. And it gives me an opportunity to reposition it if I don't get it quite right the first time. So now I have this here. I'm going to take this card, fold it over, and press that right against it so that it aligns at the base. If you need to fiddle with it a bit, go right ahead. Okay. And there it is, nicely glued into place. The only other thing I need to do is bring this one around and glue it into place. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just go ahead and take my glue and squeeze it on. Doesn't matter if I go off the side on this because all of it's glued together and it's all good. Let's take this, I'm going to fold it, line it up here, give it a nice squeeze, and there's my lovely card. Absolutely stunning! And don't you just love the way this basil bling catches the light? So there is your completed stand-up box or trophy card. For mailing it, you would simply press it flat, because it goes flat, to go into an envelope. And I'll show you how to make an envelope size for this in another episode. You can always buy that brown craft envelope to put it in and decorate that yourself. Thank you for joining me in today's lab. I had a lot of fun bringing this card to you. Please remember that I will have specific measurements on my blog at inkallusions.blogspot.com. Until then.